I want to welcome everybody to the ACW Pride panel around our theme this month, which is Include Her. The Alliance Channel of Women is a nonprofit organization of women and all of their allies in leadership, ownership, revenue generating, marketing, operations, tech roles in the IT industry. The ACW brings all of us together to empower and advance women's careers and those in leadership roles. And the ACW is for everyone, be it a cisgendered male or female, transgendered, non-binary. And I'd like to introduce our panelists for today who span those as well. So if you'll please introduce yourself and include your pronouns as we move forward. I'll start with you, Alison.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alison Alfano. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a solutions engineer in the B2B SaaS sales world.
Excellent. Welcome. And Kameron?
Yeah, Kameron Olsen. I go by he, him. I am the president and owner of the Channel Advisors and located in Dallas, Texas, and excited to be on this panel with you today.
Thank you both so much for joining. I'm Jenn, Redmond, she, her. I've been part of the channel for over 20 years. I'm currently at Fusion Connect as their director of sales operations, and super nervous, but also super excited to have this opportunity here to talk about Pride Month and how we're including our LGBTQIA team members. One of the topics, as you see, I asked to start with pronouns. I wanted to start our introductions around pronouns because I believe that's a space for growth for, everyone in this industry. Our current workforce has such a wide span of generations. From, I think I mentioned my dad is in the space as a boomer, and then we go all the way to people on my team who are Gen Z, if you're Gen X, a Zennial, Millennial, what that looks like and how we can really best include pronouns throughout our industry and why using someone's pronouns is so important. So I wondered if you both could give me some perspective around pronouns in your workplace and what you've seen, as well as how we can best, move those that forward. Do you want to start, Kameron?
Sure. Happy to do that. It was interesting. I have a trans child, and raising that child, I kind of got to see the full transition and spectrum of feeling comfortable in the space of choosing pronouns and walking through the fluidity of that. And I had a great opportunity with her as she became a little more comfortable in her own skin when I worked for Teleris and was on that inclusion committee there. Her and I did a little video for the Day of Trans Awareness, and we had asked questions back and forth and talked a little bit more about her journey. And one of the questions got brought up was about pronouns and how she would prefer that interaction to go. And I think what was most eye-opening to me is her statements around just ask. Like, I think a lot of us who are not aware of the community and really the social engagement of how to interact, I think a lot of us get a little scared of being canceled or saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And we know it's a touchy subject, but I think we can all agree that going up and just asking the question, hey, what pronouns do you prefer, actually validates the need for that person to be seen as an individual, and that you care enough to come up and ask is the appropriate thing to do.
Absolutely. I think that for me, I really love when I see in the signature line, and I'm seeing more and more of that, of what those pronouns are, or when I go to conferences or events, having the pronouns displayed on a name tag or something that gives that information out there so that I'm addressing people in the pronouns that they prefer. It's not about grammar. It's not about, you know, we're going to have 1,000 genders. It's about people being seen for who they are and how they want to be seen and heard. And at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants, is to just feel appropriately seen. And I think that kindness is one of my core values. And I think that it's just a kindness, no matter how you believe, you know, someone's pronouns should look, to give them the kindness of utilizing those pronouns correctly.
Yeah, and I'd like to add too, I think I love hearing you say about having the pronouns in the email signatures. So I was a lead on our ERG. And one thing that I learned along the way is one of the speakers talked about micro affirmations. So we always hear about those microaggressions, but micro affirmations, we don't really hear so much about that. And really, when you start thinking about throwing in those pronouns in that, it's just a nice, subtle way of letting people not only know this is my pronouns, but it's also a way of identifying yourself as someone who's open-minded and a safe person. Because really, it's all about respect and leveraging that the proper language, whether it's gender neutrality or just overall just being inclusive. It really does validate and really helps people feel that they belong and that they're valued.
I agree. I think that on the flip of the coin is sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes we misgender or we don't use an appropriate pronoun. And I think that I do it with my kiddo sometimes. And I always want to fix it or give myself a lot of maybe shame around not doing it correctly. And I also think that it's important if when we speak to someone and do that we can, work with that person to come back from a place of grace and a place of understanding what that looks like. And I'm curious, Kameron, with your experience, if and how the best way to work through when you get it wrong.
Yeah, I remember. I remember one specific instance where I misgendered my child, and it hurt her feelings. And I trying to make the situation better. I said, look, for years your pronouns were he, him, and now we go by she, her. It's not like it's easy for me to just make that transition in my head. It's like saying that, for years this has been a table and now we're going to call it a chair. She says, I'm not a chair. And in 100%, it's not the same. But sometimes there's just some patterns that we're used to. And we got to a place where I think she realized that my heart was in the right place, that I loved her and cared for her as my child, more than any of the pronouns that I got wrong. And so I think we got there finally.
And I think that happens. And what you said around it being your heart in the right place, and you tried to fix it and you tried to understand and listen. And I think that's really the key here is when there is a situation where somebody we've done an incorrect pronoun, or we've addressed someone in it misgendered, etc., that correcting it, moving forward, and making sure that person knows that you see them for who they are is the most important.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think too it's important just to say, what is that intent? So, it kind of ties into exactly what Kameron experienced. It's the intent is good. However, we do have autopilot and we just go forward. And so it's important to just express that intent. And Jenn, you said something very powerful a second ago, which was shame. And at the end of the day, we need to kind of try and separate that and not feel ashamed, because when we feel shame, we're pushing that shame energy and just into that space in general. And so the same kindness, and that's your core value, right? You just said that same kindness that you want others to receive and you want to give others. No, we also have to start in with ourselves, because when we're kind to ourselves and we give ourselves grace, then when we're in those moments, it's a lot easier for us to react and respond and explain, hey, oh my, I apologize for that. That wasn't my intent. I'm in the process of learning, because really at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're all learning along the way.
Well, and I think that really transitions well to another topic that I wanted to discuss was how we show up with allyship every day in our workspace, how we are educating ourselves, always evolving. When we're worried about getting something wrong or we're hurting someone around our ignorance, I really feel like it can cause that shame, and then that shame leads to retreat from in a lot of ways retreat from finding out the education or owning up to how you can be an ally. I really feel this way around my allyship in other areas of marginalized communities. I have to constantly find grace within myself and with others. We're coming up on Juneteenth, and I did not learn about that in school, and I've had to really educate myself quite a lot in just the last few years, and I felt a lot of shame at first for not knowing it, but I really just had to pull myself up and learn. So while educating myself around the pronouns, around non-binary and transgendered men and women, I've really had to shove any shame around not feeling that or guilt around not understanding that and push forward and educating myself. How are you advocating those education moments within your own lives, within your workplace?
Alison, you want to go first on that one?
Sure, I can. Yeah, so as far as education, I think it all starts about with being curious. We all need to come from that place of curiosity and understanding that we don't all have that same journey and we all don't have the same understanding. And so once we become curious about something that we might hear or might have been exposed to, then it is all about digging into those finer details and really trying to educate ourselves. Because I think we need to be mindful about, we shouldn't rely on the specific communities to educate us, but help us really clarify what we go and teach ourselves, right? Because like you said, you had to go teach yourself about Juneteenth. And, one of the things that I am really passionate about is inclusive language. And I literally just went out and I just started digging into a lot of just inclusive language. Why is it important? Why is it not? What does it mean? And, I found it extremely fascinating how many words and little phrases that we use that really do have an undermining tone. It's crazy. And one of the trainings that I did was just a general speaking of the term guys, right? You get on a meeting and you're like, hey guys, how's everybody doing? Right. And being in the tech world, being female in a call, you're one of a few. If you're lucky, there's another woman on the call with you. But part of that education that I gave was, it's not about being offended, right? It's about feeling welcome. So if I get on a call and you're like, hey guys, I'm not offended. I'm like, hey, what's up? How's it going? But at the same time, if somebody else gets on a call and starts it off and hey, how's the team doing? Welcome everyone. It feels different. It really does. And it's not that I don't belong in either one of the conversations, because I do. But I just think it's just those little things like that. It's just educating and learning and then helping people understand it. I'm not offended, but there's another way that we can do it to feel more inclusive.
That inclusive language is something that I work on quite a lot and have done as much personal growth as I can on that. Well, not forever. I can continue to grow there. But I do have the advantage of living in the South, where y'all really helps me out in a lot of situations.
You do it right there.
Y'all means y'all's for all, and
Y'all
and
means
yet-
y'all.
and yet I completely catch myself using verbiage sometimes that I don't fully understand the origin of, or little phrases that can exclude some. And I think that like you said, with hey guys, or hey, even if it's just hey ladies, like if I don't know how they identify, I need to probably use a little bit more inclusive language when I address the team.
And I'll kind of add one more perspective to that too, is that, I'm married to a woman and I have a wife, and it took me, because I'm conditioned like everybody else, it was very uncomfortable for me in the beginning to refer to her as my wife. And then I feel like I've gotten to that place where I'm super comfortable with it. Like if it works in the conversation, it just comes up, I just say it. But then now I'm reflecting back on what I'm teaching myself about inclusivity. And really, it's about saying my spouse, right? So instead of saying I have a wife or I have a husband, now it's my spouse. And in a way, I feel conflicted, because I feel like I work really hard to get comfortable with being comfortable with who I am and who I'm married to in that binary way. Whereas now I want to allow folks around me to feel more included. And so now I need to learn to use the term spouse. So that is something that I'm currently working on, because it's kind of like that balance of who I am, my own comfort, and then also trying to adapt to make everyone around me feel welcome too.
I would add to that piece, kind of the being the advocate, is I think, first of all, a couple of my recommendations or thought processes is we need to stop villainizing ignorance. Like, things are changing so fast. The world around us is changing. We only had a couple gender identity markers, 10, 15 years ago, and now there's lots. And so not feeling bad that you're not kept up with everything, but coming from a mind of curiosity and caring, I think is how to solve for that. I think so many people get worried about doing the wrong thing that they don't do anything at all. And then that feels excluded, right? They're ignoring them. They have a hard time knowing how to interact or what questions to ask. And then they just don't do anything at all. And I think that's maybe part of the problem. The other thing I see in this space is people really struggle to come to a place of appreciating the other perspective, even though there may be a disagreement or not have the same views on a particular thing. I think for so many of us, it's really important for us to identify and stand out as individuals. I honor that. We all have different ways. I do my hair, I dress a certain way, I wear a beard, right? To be different, to identify myself as an individual. But I also think that we as a humanity need to realize that inside we're pretty much all the same. We all want to be loved. We all want to belong. We all want to be seen. We all want, these typical human traits. And I think in a place where everything is super polarizing, I think we could do a better job of learning to come together and having conversations where we come together and agree on a certain topic that feels good for everybody, and not just saying, hey, it's either my way or the highway on either side of the spectrum.
I think that we've talked a little bit about the word curious, and it brings me back to one of my favorite shows, which was Ted Lasso. And one of the Walt Whitman quotes that he has in that show, one of my favorite parts, where he quotes Walt Whitman saying, be curious, not judgmental. And so I think, Kameron, what you said has a lot of merit, as long as that person is coming in with the curiosity, with the ability to learn and grow and expand. And that's what we all want. You're completely accurate when you say what, as a human race, we're looking for is, belonging. And And so that's really allyship at its core, is belonging. And so when you're doing the kindness of a pronoun or the, inclusive language, that's the kindness of belonging, which is really perpetuating that throughout your life and workplace. Speaking of that, I will say that, Alison, you touched a little bit on this, and I kind of want to pick at that a little bit more as we round out our panel today, and that's coming out in the workplace. I would love to discuss from a couple of different perspectives what that looks like, in 2024 in today's world. I have found that since becoming a mother, I come out all the time because when you have a kid, they're outing you wherever you go. I have two moms, like what that looks like. I hid for years within the workplace. I've been in the channel for 20 years, and I was not always out through that. In fact, this panel may be the most out I've been within our industry, but at the same time, I'll start in that I began my personal journey in that through understanding the privilege that I had to hide. I could hide. I could use different language that, I could be vague. I could, instead of spouse or partner or whatever, I could, use some of that language. So Alison, I totally understand when you want to say your wife, because to get to that place and not have to use, partner or, whatever that looked like, it's huge. But I also know that we're still coming out all the time. I got a new boss recently, and I love him, and he's fantastic. But I'm like, how do I come out? What's that going to look like? What do I have to say? Because, you kind of just don't know. So I think that it's important to understand what that looks like in the workplace today and how you handle it.
For me personally, I try to make it a non-issue. And when I say a non-issue, I mean, I just show up and let the conversations go. And eventually it will come up, and I treat it like my hetero peers, like nothing, like I'll throw in my spouse. There was this common joke about me because I worked out in a community when I was a stay-at-home parent, and I would get to the point where I'd feel comfortable with folks, and I'd say, hey, let's go for a hike. And then we would go hiking, and then we'd be out on the trail, and then they would say, your husband. And I would say, oh, I'm my wife. And then they would just drop their jaws like, what, your wife? And this happened 3 or 4 times. And apparently there was a trend, which I had no idea. But then I thought about it, and I thought, if you think about it, that's just because we were really personalizing that relationship at that point. It was no longer just like a surface, hey, let's throw some sweat on the ground and go home. And it was really about them also learning that those assumptions, like you said, it is a privilege to be able to choose when you come out or choose how people see you or in that moment. And I think that's one of the important things is that we within our community can do is understand that we are also allies within our own community. It's important for me along my journey to not allow folks to make those assumptions that when I talk about my kids that I have a male partner. There's many times where I would just ignore it. And now not so much. Now it's no, because the only way that we can change people's mindset about stereotypes is by being visible, which is why Pride Month is very, very important.
Totally agree.
I think for me, the word that really kind of stands out in this space is authenticity. As you and I get to know each other, we're building in a relationship. And I find the relationships that are the closest and have the most meaning and feel the best to me are the ones where people can feel authentically themselves. Look, I'm not going to come up to you and I'm not going to say, hey, my name's Kameron Olsen. I'm a cisgender, straight, white male, right? It's not typically the flow of conversation. But during a conversation, I think the biggest honor that I feel is when somebody feels like they can be authentically themselves. And look, if we're talking about our spouses and I mention my wife and you mention your wife, that's great. It doesn't necessarily shock me. And what I would encourage is people to just be authentically themselves. And I think, I forget who the actor was, but it's like, look, there is 8 billion, 7 billion people on this planet. And if I'm my authentic self and you don't accept me and you're kind of an a-hole or whatever it is, you're doing me a favor, because then that's one less person I have to worry about connecting with. And I would encourage those people to come out, be your authentic self, connect with people authentically, and build relationships that are really you and meaningful to you.
I think that for me also personally, every time that I affirm myself authentically in some way, and I try to do the same as you do, Alison, and just kind of power through, just say it as if there's no big deal. But I do still find myself stumbling sometime or like tensing up. And but every time I move forward with my authentic self in that way, a little piece of me that hid before heals. And my hope is that when I do it and there's the visibility out there, that it gives somebody else who I'm talking to the permission to be their authentic selves as well. And I think that it does build upon that relationship to be able to do that. And to feel safe in the workplace to be able to, which I'm very grateful that I do feel that safety. And I know that's not always the case for everyone, wherever they are. So I try to at least, if I can be the safe space for someone at any time, that's my goal. All right, well, we're rounding out. So I want to give everybody just a final word, if you will. I want to make sure that those of you watching this panel understand that within the ACW, advocacy is a key tenet. And through the D&I committee, I want to make sure that you understand we're promoting diversity across race, gender, orientation, physical abilities. And you can reach out if you have any questions or concerns to our committee. And I want to also thank Alison and Kameron for joining me for this conversation today. I'm nervous about it. And then at the same time, I felt at ease with both of you. You were both a very safe space for this conversation. And I hope these continue because I think they're so important. And so, Alison, any final thoughts?
Yes, I would just wrap it up by saying, inclusivity is something that we just need to be open and continually learn and continue to be curious and give ourselves grace. And also, we just need to remember that we are all perfectly imperfect. We're all in the same place, and we just need to all show up for each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think my parting words were, my wife said it best when we went to our first family reunion when my daughter made her social transition from male to female. And she sent out a text message just kind of giving everybody a heads up. And what she said is, hey, look, I want you guys to know that although her outer appearance may look different, she's still the same.
She is.
Sorry. She's still the same, just the same sweet person on the inside. And I think that's what we have to focus on, are the things that unite us. Appreciate, celebrate, be proud of what makes you different, but also unite each other and come united because we're really very much the same on the inside.
Amen. I couldn't have said it better, Kameron. Thank you very much. Thank you both for joining us, and happy Pride, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.